Hey, welcome to 10-Minute Apologetics. I'm so glad you are tuning into these videos, and I wanted to just share a little bit about my heart and the purpose behind these videos before we dive into some more tactics and a tactical approach to defending our faith and answering questions that people have. I've studied ever since I became a follower of Jesus. I've just really loved studying and reading more about defending our faith, and that our faith is rational and it's based on evidence, and it's not just a blind faith and aw shucks, I hope what I believe is right, and I know there's all these other religions, and man, I hope I picked the right one. You know, our faith is based on evidence. It's not blind faith. But a lot of the material out there, you know, you have to read books and you have to watch videos 60 minutes, 90 minutes, and a lot of the material is really in the weeds because a lot of it is reaching atheists that might have more of a background in science or philosophy and things like that. And there's not a lot out there that's short segments that's really accessible and understandable, so that all of us can understand how to defend our faith. You know, it's not that hard. And that's why I really wanted to start with a tactical approach, which is based on Greg Koukl's book, Tactics. And a couple of days ago, I put a link underneath the video. I'll do the same today. I highly recommend the book, but you could also watch videos on it because there is so much out there in terms of content on how we could defend our faith and different angles and different ways of doing it. And we're going to go through each of those in the future. But I really think how we do it is so important, and to understand just basic tactics in answering questions and sharing what we believe and defending what we believe, and that every time someone asks us a question, we don't have to give an answer right away, because a lot of times we don't understand the question and we just rush in to answer it and we really make no headway. You know, so the first tactic is really the Columbo tactic. Our goal is not necessarily always to win a person over, to prove that we're right. In fact, even if we prove that we're right, it doesn't mean that the person will become a follower of Jesus. So a lot of times if you set the bar a little lower and just say, I want to put a stone in their shoe, I want to cause them to think a little bit. And you know, if you think of Columbo, he always wore this rumpled trench coat and had a cigar and just, you know, a lot of times seemed confused. And he would say, you know, I'm confused. I don't understand how the person got into the locked room without a key, or, you know, he would come up with stuff like that. And so the first Columbo tactic is just asking, what do you mean by that? It allows a person to give a little more information that we can use. It gives you time to think at the same time. And then the second question is, how did you come to that conclusion? It's not always your job to answer every question. Instead, maybe an answer is making them think about it more. That's the Socratic method as well, and what Socrates did with his pupils or disciples. How did you come to that conclusion? That sometimes might make them think a little bit more. Oh, I read it on the internet. Well, how do you know it's true? Do we just believe everything we read on the internet? Oh, I don't know. Maybe I need to look at that a little bit more. In fact, most people make assertions that they've read on the internet or read in a book and just assume are true, and don't do the background research themselves. So the Columbo tactic, which puts a stone in their shoe, is the very first thing, is what do you mean by that? And the second thing is, how did you come to that conclusion? Or I like to ask, how do you know that's true? Just because you read it, just because somebody said it, and they may have said it, and they may have a PhD, they may be a scientist. Those are logical fallacies. It's called an argument to authority. Just because somebody has letters after their name doesn't make what they say true. Science doesn't tell us anything. Scientists do. And scientists are people. And people are flawed, and people have a point of view. And so we want to understand that just because somebody's a scientist, they're scientists on a lot of sides of different topics, but they're all humans, and they all have a point of view. And so understanding that we started with the Columbo tactic. Now, after that, it helps to have a little bit more information and to be able to think about it, the assertions that other people are making, because it's up to them to defend what they say. The burden of proof is on them. If they make a claim or they make an assertion, you know, that burden of proof's on them. They might say, you know, geez, I've studied this and I've read all these books, and historians basically say that there's no evidence that Jesus ever existed. They may say something like that, but you don't automatically believe that What do you mean by that? And they might say, well, I don't think he ever existed. Okay, maybe that's a kind of an obvious one. How did you come to that conclusion? Well, I've studied and I've read a lot of books. Well, if a book saying something does a book saying something make it true? And that may put a stone in their shoe and make them think about it. And in reality is the vast majority, like pretty much every New Testament historian, whether they're Christian, agnostic, atheist, they acknowledge that Jesus existed. It's pretty much undeniable. So somebody making a claim like that is just making a claim. That doesn't make it true. Also, don't feel like you have to win. Your goal is not to win. You could just say, do it with grace. Say, I watch a lot of videos with Ravi Zacharias answering questions, and people in his ministry, and he always answers questions with grace, no matter how angry a person may come across asking the question. He always says, that's a really good question. We want to validate their questions because their questions are genuine questions that people have. So we want to validate. You raise a really good point. And sometimes if you don't know the answer right away, you could say, I'd really love to think about that. Would that be okay? Of course they're going to say yes, and then you get to research it. And guess what happens when you research it and dig a little more into it? That's how we learn. Nobody knows everything to start with. You have to research things and learn them a little bit more. So the next tactic is called the suicide tactic. And it sounds a little scary, but it's not. Suicide tactic is basically, so a lot of times people will make assertions and shoot themselves in the foot while making that assertion. They might say, I don't believe that anything is absolutely true. Well, that claim is making a claim that they believe is absolutely true. You could say, is that absolutely true that there is no absolute truth? So their claim is self-refuting. That's called suicide. The claim kills itself, basically. I don't believe we can be certain of anything. Are you certain of that? You could just ask them a question back that addresses that. There's another tactic that's called blowing the roof off. It's basically reductio ad absurdum. It basically means you take their point to its logical conclusion. A point they might raise is, I don't believe a loving God would send people to hell. Well, as a Christian, that's actually a great opening. And you might ask, do you expect an earthly judge to be just and to punish crimes? Hopefully they'll say yes. Or you could even ask about moral crimes. Should moral crimes be punished? I mean, if somebody says no, you can ask, are you saying then if we kill people, it shouldn't be punished? We could just do whatever we want? Most people are going to say, no, I don't think so. I think they should be punished. Otherwise, you could just grab their wallet, take the money out of it and say, have a nice day. You have no complaint. You can't go after me. I can't be punished for that. And if they say yes, they should be punished. And if you expect an earthly judge to exact justice and to follow through on justice, and an earthly judge is flawed, and an earthly judge is imperfect, I mean, I think we'd all agree we're all imperfect, how much more just should a heavenly judge be? And for there to really be justice in the world, don't you think there needs to be an ultimate justice and an ultimate heavenly judge to dispense justice fairly? And shouldn't we expect the God of the universe to be fair when he dispenses justice? And you could get into more of a topic in hell and things like that. But our goal isn't really ultimately at the beginning to answer questions. It's just to ask questions and make the person think. And that's, ultimately our goal. Somebody might say, I don't believe people should impose their values on others. Now think about that for a second. Are you imposing your value that we shouldn't impose values on others on me? It kind of sounds like that. Well, okay, so then they're gonna backpedal, but that's a suicide tactic. That's their view shoots itself in the foot. All views are equally valid. Well, I believe that Jesus is the only way to God. Is that equally valid to you who might believe that there's many ways to God? How could they be equally valid? If I believe 2 + 2 is 4 and you believe 2 + 2 is 5, is that equally valid? They might say, I only believe what science can prove. What do you say to that? Well, can you prove that view scientifically? No. They're making a philosophical statement. Finally, we have to be careful about handling steamrollers. Steamroller is that angry atheist who just asks question after question and doesn't take time to really dig into the answers that you're giving. And you need a way to say, hold on, hold on, and you do it in a gentle way. I really value your questions. I think they are good questions. I think they're really important, and I would love to take a couple minutes to really answer that. Would you mind giving me that time? And hopefully they'll say yes, and if they say no, they're not really interested in a dialogue. Somebody I listen to a lot of his videos, or watch a lot of his videos online, is Frank Turek. And sometimes he'll get an atheist, and he goes and speaks at colleges a lot, and his whole thing is, I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. But he'll go to colleges and students will ask him question after question, and finally he'll say, hold on. If you knew for certainty that Christianity was true, would you believe it? And a lot of times they'll admit no, because their objections are not really intellectual objections. They just don't want to follow God for whatever reason. They want to be the boss of their own life. And we're going to get more into that next week. But by the end, your real goal is just to understand their question, ask them questions, put that stone in their shoe, make them think about it a little more. And if you don't feel comfortable answering their question right at that moment, don't just make something up or act arrogant about it. Say, those are really good questions, or that's a really good question. I would love some time to really think about that and mull that over. But I'd love to talk with you more about it. When's a good time that we could get together again? All right, thank you so much for tuning in to 10-Minute Apologetics. It's about over 11-minute apologetics today. But I hope you learned some helpful tactics. Next episode, we are going to talk about basically the foundation of apologetics, what we know about every single person that doesn't believe in God, and a great starting point, at least on our end, to understand where they're coming from. And I think that will be a really big help. Thank you for tuning in. Have a wonderful day. God bless you.